Did Ted Bundy actually find God while on death row, or was he just saying that just so he can avoid the chair the next day? Take a look at his body language, and then we'll break it down.
Are you thinking about all those victims out there and their families who are so wounded, years later, their lives have not returned to normal. They will never return to normal.
Absolutely.
Are you carrying that load, that weight? Is the remorse there?
First, the interviewer is James Dobson and is known as a Christian evangelical psychologist, which Ted Bundy hand-selected to conduct this interview, surely hoping that since Dobson is a Christian, he would be more open to considering Bundy's redemption and newfound faith in God, and would therefore give him a more favorable interview in wanting Dobson to be a vocal advocate to the Florida governor to spare Bundy's life.
People will accuse me of being self-serving, but we're beyond that now. I mean, I'm just telling you how I feel. But through God's help, I have been able to come to the point where much too late, but better late than never, feel the hurt and the pain that I am responsible for. Yes, absolutely. In the past few days, myself and a number of investigators have been talking about unsolved cases, murders that I was involved in. And it's hard to talk about all these years later because it revives in me all those terrible feelings and those thoughts that I have steadfastly and diligently dealt with, and I think successfully, with the love of God.
We also have to remember that Bundy is a diagnosed psychopath, so he is naturally very manipulative and lacks true empathy.
And yet it's reopened that, and I felt the pain and I felt the horror again of all that. And I can only hope that those who I have harmed, and those who I've caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse, will believe what I'm saying now, that there is loose in their towns and their communities people like me today whose dangerous impulses are being fueled day in and day out by violence in the media in its various forms.
The most accurate way to read someone's body language is to take everything about the situation, context, and cluster into account to increase your accuracy. As I always say, people who don't use situation, context, and cluster and assume something of somebody with a stray nose touch or hair toss are not reading body language. They're just being idiots. Did you notice how concerned he is of the opinions of others regarding his claimed faith? And he's doing quite a bit of convincing and not just conveying here?
I know that people will accuse me of being self-serving, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse. That kind of forgiveness is of God, and if they have it, they have it. If they don't, well, maybe they'll find it someday.
Therefore indicating that his said faith is at least partially to get him off of death row. You're not going to send an extremely remorseful fellow Christian to the chair now, will you? Also, did you notice Bundy say all of that looking consistently down at the table? Yes, sometimes when a liar feels that the person they are speaking with can see right through their lies, they will be very apprehensive to look them in the eye.
And yet it's reopened that, and I felt the pain and I felt the horror again of all that.
Bundy seemed concerned speaking to Dobson, a true believer across the table. His disingenuousness was going to be spotted. Therefore, due to insecurity, he hid his eyes as much as possible there by closing his eyes very often throughout and consistently looking down. Tilting his head down was to clearly attempt to shield his face from the interviewer and camera. But why? Right, Bundy was giving off a major duping smirk throughout that he was desperately trying to hold back as if his life depended on it. Oh, that's right, it basically did. You can really see his duping and out-of-place smirk show through at this moment when he says this key line in his monologue.
Come to the point where much too late, but better late than never, feel the hurt and the pain that I am responsible for.
Here's another thing that we know from watching prior Ted Bundy interviews. He has a very uncontrollable, deviant smirk when lying. Watch this.
You don't change. You stay Ted Bundy 24 hours a day.
Well,
You are not guilty.
I'm not guilty.
You think about getting out of here.
Well, legally, sure.
Bundy jumped out of this second-story window at the front of the Pitkin County Courthouse this morning.
Lastly, we noticed some odd incongruent head shakes at key moments.
Yes, absolutely.
Where we would expect a head nod if he was authentic.
Yes, absolutely.
And that nose touch could have been due to a buildup of tingly nervous sensation in his nose from all the deceitfulness throughout, or possibly even did that to mimic human emotion to make his penance appear more believable.
A man who does not want to die does not confess to 28 murders.
I don't want to die. I'm not going to kid you. I'll kid you not.
What motive could he have had?
His life, right?
It makes no sense at all. The man was making his final statement.
That's sometimes the case, but not with someone like Ted Bundy. There was way too much evidence against him, and everyone knew he did it. Claiming reform through God and claiming to be the only person in the world to stop future Ted Bundys was his only card to play at that moment in hopes to avoid the chair. Taking the entire situation, context, and cluster into consideration, Ted Bundy seemed quite disingenuous and was apparently using a fabricated faith in God to avoid the chair. However, for the faithful, only God knows for sure. Now in the comments, based on your personal faith and beliefs, where do you think Ted Bundy is now? Let everyone know in the comments below. Subscribe and follow for new criminal psychology videos.